Today, I want to teach you that expert readers always think to themselves, what mind work does this text want me to do? Fiction texts sometimes signal for readers to make a movie in their minds as they read, and other times a signal for readers to list or collect information they read. All right, so I know that sometimes when I read fiction books, I can definitely picture what's happening in my head like a movie. So I picture the characters, what they're doing as I'm reading. But then also sometimes when they list off details, I collect that information and make a list in my head. So that's what we're going to talk about today. All right, so how will you know when a text is signaling you to make a mental movie or to envision, as expert readers refer to that job? All right, so that's going to be pretty simple. Anytime the text reads like a movie, where you can imagine what the characters look like and what they're doing, or interacting with each other, or taking in their setting, that's your cue to make that movie in your mind. In fact, you will do this most of the time as you read fiction. But when that moving image comes to a halt, the author probably wants to fill you in on some information you need to know. In those places, the text will signal for you to stop envisioning and start collecting information. Sometimes you'll learn facts that will help you grasp what happened before the story, or you might learn about the characters or about their world. It's important to shift gears when this happens, because the information you learn can help you understand more about the story. All right, so I'm going to read a passage from Stone Fox, and you're going to follow along, and you're going to try and either figure out if you're going to make a movie in your head, or if the author's trying to fill you in on information, okay? So those are the two things you're going to try and figure out. If the author, Niley, you need to show your camera. And Kylie, you too need to keep your camera on. That was one of our expectations we went over in morning meeting.
Is that a part of our independent work?
Yep, so you'll work on that when you read today. But today, as I read the passage from Stone Fox again, you are going to either figure out if you're making a movie in your head, or if the author is trying to inform you on something, okay?
Can you tell me about that again? You were cutting out, kind of.
I was cutting out. Okay, so I'm just going to read a passage from Stone Fox, and the author is either wanting you to envision or make a movie in your head about what's going on, or he wants you to collect information. So that's what you're going to try and do as I read from Stone Fox. All right, so that evening, little Willie made a discovery. He was sitting at the foot of Grandfather's bed playing the harmonica. He wasn't as good as Grandfather by a long shot, and whenever he missed a note, Searchlight would put her head back and howl. Once, when little Willie was off key, Searchlight actually grabbed the harmonica in her mouth. Little Willie asked Grandfather, knowing very well that Grandfather would not answer. Grandfather had not talked, not one word, for over 3 weeks. But something happened that was almost like talking. Grandfather put his hand down on the bed with his palm facing upward. Little Willie looked at the hand for a long time. And then he asked in a whisper, "Does that mean yes?" Grandfather closed his hand slowly and then opened it again. Little Willie rushed to the side of the bed. His eyes were wild with excitement. Grandfather turned his hand over and laid it flat on the bed. Palm down meant no. Palm up meant yes. Before the night was over, they had worked out the signals in their hand and finger code. One finger meant, Dejay, you need to stay muted unless you're asking a question. Two fingers meant water, but most of the time, little Willie just asked questions that grandfather could answer either yes or no. And Searchlight seemed to know what was going on, for she would lick grandfather's hand every time he made a sign. All right, so now I'm going to read just a little bit more, and then I'm going to ask you. So that part, before I move on, do you think you were making a movie in your mind, or were you collecting information? So Vaughn, you have 1 minute to turn your camera on, or I'm going to put you in the waiting room. All right, so what do you think? Do you think you were making a movie in your head, or do you think you were collecting information? Oscar? Gotta unmute yourself.
Collecting information from my head.
Not collecting information, because, I mean, so yes, I can see why you thought you were collecting information, because they did give us information about grandfather signaling. But could you picture grandfather signaling in your head? What that looked like? Could you guys picture that in your head, what his signals looked like? Give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down. Could you picture what grandfather's signals looked like in your head? I see 1 thumb, 2 thumbs, 3 thumbs. 4 thumbs. All right, so hopefully you were able to picture what was going on in your head when they were trying to figure out the signals, and Searchlight was howling and licking grandfather's hand. So now I'm going to move on, and then I'm going to read one more quick paragraph, and then you're going to tell me if we're collecting information or making a movie in our head, okay? So the next day, little Willie began to prepare for the harvest. Give me a thumbs up. Can you guys hear me? Give me a thumbs up if you can hear me.
My Epic is not working. I can't watch
So Jose, we're not on Epic right now. You need to stay muted.
Wait, you want call with me?
Jose, you need to stay muted.
Not working.
Jose, we're not on Epic right now.
Okay.
All right, so there was a lot of work to be done. The underground shed, where the potatoes would be stored until they could be sold, had to be cleaned. The potato sacks had to be inspected and mended if needed be. The plow had to be sharpened, but most important, because grandfather's old mare had died last winter, a horse to pull the plow had to be located and rented. All right, so were we collecting information or making a movie? Were we collecting information or making a movie?
Collecting information.
We were collecting information. Nice job. All right, so we were collecting the information about everything that little Willie needs to do before he harvests all the potatoes. All right. So did you guys kind of see that switch between making a movie in your head and collecting information? Did you see how we saw the characters, how they interacted, and then the author had to tell us what little Willie needs to do before he harvested? All right. So we are no longer, when we read, we were no longer standing with Willie at grandfather's bedside. The text has signaled to us to collect information. So when I reread that just now, I collected the information, the facts, and then I kept it all in my head, or I could write it down in my reading log or my reader's notebook. All right, so that's all we're going to talk about today. So in your reading today, I want you guys to decide whether your book is Kamaria. Make sure your tongue stays in your mouth, please. So you guys are going to decide whether your book is trying to have you make a movie or collect information, okay? So before I show you your independent work for today, let me go ahead and we'll add to this chart. All right, so
you're gonna read a book and then you're gonna get on Google Drive.
I haven't gone over independent work yet. All right, so these next couple of weeks, we're going to talk about readers understand a story by. So yesterday, we talked about readers giving themselves a comprehension check. So I'll add that. And thinking, today we talked about thinking. What mind work is the text signaling me to forget, either making a movie or making a list of information. Okay. All right, so now I'll go over your independent work. So I'll go ahead and share my screen. Let me try it again. There we go. All right, so who can raise their hand and tell me, where do I find my reading independent work? Where do I find my reading independent work? Kevin? Gotta make sure you're unmuted so we can hear you. All right, where do I find my independent reading work? Who could tell me? Irsu?
You're going to reading?
We go into reading. So today's small group will be Travion, Vaughn, Dejay, and Kamaria. So that means the three of you who are on, you need to stay on so we can do our small group. Okay, so when I make my breakout room, you will click join. Okay, and then Tuesday, you're going to click on day Tuesday because today is Tuesday. And here's our checklist of independent work for reading. So you will read a book or get on Epic. Okay, here's the class code. Make sure you add your reading time to your reading log. Who can tell me, where's your reading log? Heavenly?
On Google Drive.
It's in your Google Drive. So you will go to Google Drive and search for reading log and yours should pop up. Then you will get on Lexia for 15 minutes and then you have our read aloud at 9:45.
What do you do